So France 23, Scotland 27. Scotland take a massive historic win in France, claim second place in the Six Nations 2021. What a great game. Hi guys, welcome back. Let's get into this game now. With Scotland taking second place there, we've got Wales winning the Six Nations, so many congratulations to them. This video is about the game itself, but again, congratulations to Wales on a good win there in the championship. But this game really was all about second place in the end, even though it was billed as, can France win by 21 points, score 4 tries? Where actually, in essence, all the way through it was just who can win this game. And I think the difference was both sides absolutely wanted this game, great effort, but France were a bit frantic. You could tell they were always in the back of their minds thinking of this big win, this big historic 21-point margin win to claim the Six Nations. And Scotland really, all they cared about was getting the win by any means whatsoever. And it actually led to that final meltdown by Dulin, when all he had to do was kick the ball out and France gets second place. But he played on, there was a penalty, and Scotland win it. So, that really was probably the difference in the mentality. Just brilliant from Scotland, hung in there. The game swung backwards and forwards, and in the end, it was France that blinked first and Scotland capitalised. The match begins, very wet as I say, but Ficou's on fire straight away. Goodness me, he played well, and he's played great through the whole championship. Takes a high ball, forces a turnover penalty. They get a scrum, get a penalty from the scrum. That's because Ficou again has pushed Van der Merwe into touch, so good double start from him. And France win a big penalty, big scrum penalty. And you're thinking maybe the French scrum can get the upper hand, and they did occasionally, but Scotland held firm enough for that not to be a massive factor. And very interesting, this first penalty right in front of the sticks, I thought they'd probably go for a scrum and try and get a try straight away, but they kick it. So, a slow start for France there. But anyway, at this point, that's not a biggie. Then Scotland get a really good period after about 10 minutes of pressure. Turner breaks off a maul that's stalling. Then they go to 1 metre out with pick and goes, but another good rip from Ficou. I mean, he's had 3 great impacts on the game already. But there is advantage. They go to another line out, a better maul this time. Turner again goes to 1 metre out, and it's actually Dwayne Van der Merwe who comes in and acts like a forward, powers over for a try, although it really does look like a classic double movement, but hey, sometimes it goes your way. So 3 points to 7, Scotland are up. And at this point, I think France just had that look in their face like, we needed to start better than this. We're probably not going to do this. And that frantic kind of edge just started to slowly creep in. And the ball's a bar of soap, and they start to try and play around with it in really dangerous areas. Eyes off the ball, not even catching it properly, bobbling around everywhere. And there's a turnover penalty they give away, and it's 3-10 straight away. And again, France not quite learning, trying to play some rugby. But again, inevitably, they drop the ball because they're just trying a little bit too hard and the conditions are terrible. And Scotland, with the likes of Hogg and Russell, just happy to bang the ball long, skid it into touch, for example, and just force France to chase the game already. Skinner makes a good strip and Scotland could score, but they knock it on this time. On 22 minutes, France, they leave that ball in the scrum, again, to see if they can get a big scrum dominance. But actually, it's the Scots that come out on top this time and relieve the pressure. And it just feels like France are trying to chase the game a little bit. Scotland swarming over them in defence, forcing some mistakes. Then on 24 minutes, Marchand makes a lovely turnover. I've just put a note here. Great technique, so good. Even Wayne Barnes compliments on his technique. Hooker of the tournament, Marchand, just brilliant every single game. Congratulations to him, even though they didn't win the game. Then a few minutes later, it's Scotland's turn to make a scrum mistake. They leave the ball into their scrum for far too long, and the French front row does manage to literally fold the Scottish front row in half this time. They get a penalty. It goes back to 6-10. Then we have a huge touch penalty from France. They get a 10-metre maul. Penaud's nose gets a bit exploded on Watson's knee, so there's blood everywhere there. Another penalty 5 metres out. This is a big phase of penalties now where Scotland get into a fair bit of trouble with this penalty count. Anyway, so Scotland make a mess of the French maul, but it still goes to 5 metres out. Some basic phases because the ball's so slippery, just going literally left and right from France. But they do manage to eke out another penalty, call a scrum, which I think's the right move at this time because the yellow card is close, but they need to try. The phases are still messy, but they get another penalty. Scotland just infringing too much now. They call another scrum, and eventually they go wide from Dupont, who throws a loopy ball off his weaker hand. But Penaud makes some magic, a bad little overread from Van der Merwe. Penaud skips round him, feeds inside to Doolan. They go over the try they absolutely needed. A fantastic conversion from Intermac, so they go ahead 13-10. Intermac, to me, kicked well. He played okay. He didn't quite look fully match sharp. I don't know if anyone else noticed that. Kind of athletically, not quite the incisive attacker he is at his best. Just before half-time, Aldrit breaks another tackle. France on a final attack, and then this is really bad for Scotland because they give away more penalties just when they didn't need to. More penalties, and then the yellow comes. They'd nearly avoided that yellow and got to half-time, but it's Hogg who goes off just for accumulated penalties. 5 metre line out. France could really do with scoring here. Big moment of the game. They choose to throw to the back. Very tricky ball. Can't take it. They lose the ball. So half-time, they're only up by 3 points. And it's looking tricky at this point. I can't see it personally. You never know. But, not really a good enough first half from France. But Scotland starting to get in penalty trouble there towards the end. Losing Hogg. That was a bit of a blow. Then into the second half, on 43 minutes, France actually start to get into some first good flowing attack of the game. A good counter-attack. Vakatawa looking dangerous. All the backs, Ficou looking really good. Harris is a beast in defence. He's literally all over the place making some great tackles. And for Scotland, some of their best performers were the likes of Harris and Ritchie, just working tirelessly across the park, making key tackles against, what is to be said, a massive French team, French pack. Gelanche and Olivon, probably the two biggest flanker pairing, in the world. And they just bring on huge second rows all the time. So Scotland just do so well to hold out in defence and give as good as they get. But we get a great try because France finally get their offload game going. Intermac offloading, you got Ficou in there, Vakatawa offloading, and it's a really good try for Penaud. What a great winger he is. Gets wide on the right, chips over. Probably would have been a penalty try, actually, which would have been better, but scores it anyway, chases and touches down. 18-10, really needed this, especially because they were up against 14 men. Keble comes on for Sutherland, and the first thing he does on 50 minutes is to win a scrum penalty, so great introduction for him. They actually get to a line out from that, 10 metres out, 1 metre out from drives. They get a penalty, and they stay calm, they kick it, so it's 18-13. Penaud again. Now, they're chasing the game, France, but it's starting to come off a bit. Penaud runs the ball from his own line, makes a good 30-40 metres. The ball works from right to left. So they're getting within maybe about 20 metres of the Scottish line, but because it's wet, it is dangerous. They lose the ball, and literally 30 seconds later, penalty or so to Scotland, and they're 10 metres out, Scotland 10 metres out from the French line. So that is the danger of playing too much, if you like, and chasing the game with a wet ball. Now a really good line-out move from Scotland. A nice little peel round the back. Price puts Johnson through a gap. They go to 5 metres out. Some really good D from France. France did step up well in D, but Scotland were very patient in their attacking phases, I thought. Didn't force too much. Probably, like I said, a bit more composed than France. They go 5 metre. They get a penalty, though, from that. Those patient phases. 5 metre line out. Turn down the points, another penalty, 5 metre line out, third penalty, and then Cherry barrels over. It looks like the ball's bobbled around and it might be a knock-on, but on review it's not a knock-on. It's actually a rip from France. So they get the score. They go ahead 18-20. So really exciting game if you're looking at it in the view of who's going to get second in the Six Nations. I don't know if France are, because they are still looking quite frantic. Anyway, plenty of time in the game left. France get a maul. They go up to 1 metre out, get a penalty, some big carries from the forwards, from the huge forwards, and Rabage just flops over a big hole. Really good carries there at pace, just simple one-out runners, but it really was effective. Then 5 minutes later, some good ball retention from Scotland. They get a penalty, but they turn down the points again. 5 metre line out. They could do with scoring from this, but it was their worst line out of the game. Cherry literally throwing to no one. That was a bit of a muck-up from what actually was a pretty good Scottish line-out performance. But a couple of minutes later, they're back into their phases. Some really good attack, but then Russell fends too high on Doolan, I think it is, gets a red card because he does fend to the neck. Now, was it the worst red card you've ever seen? Not at all. But similar to Aki's one, it just shows you that maybe coaching needs to change. I mean, a classic coaching technique is tuck the ball with one hand behind you, fend with your front arm, push that player off. But if you go a little bit high, it's not just a penalty or yellow, it's going to be red. And the same with Aki last week. If you stand up in the tackle and you go a bit high, it's not just going to be a penalty or yellow, it's going to be red. So I think maybe after this championship, coaches will actually realise I'm going to have to coach differently because it's just not worth it the way we used to coach because we can't get away with it now. Anyway, pop comments in the comments below what you think about that. And it looks like, well, maybe Scotland have thrown this game away with that red. But no, because France immediately give away a yellow, and just because it's near the end of the game, that's as good as a red, so it goes back to 14 versus 14. I think it's Serran comes off, gets a yellow, Serran comes on, gets a yellow, and goes off again, so that's pretty funny, really, if you're a Scottish fan, of course. So then, 5 minutes to go, Scotland are on the attack, they get a maul, big maul, but then there's a turnover from Olivon, huge turnover. He's been great all tournament, Olivon, just an absolute beast of a human being. So composed, good in the line-out, good in the floor, good in the carry, just a good player. Scrum penalty relieves the danger then for France, so it looks like maybe they've got away with it. It's an all-action finish from both sides, only 2 minutes to go. But Ritchie with a brilliant turnover penalty. What an engine that guy has on the 78th minute to cover the ground to get the turnover. Brilliant. They kick down the pitch, get a 15-metre line out. You think this is the last chance. Big carries. 80 minutes is up. They're getting close to the line, but it's wet, it's tricky, and a Scottish knock-on. So France secure the ruck, and all they have to do is kick the ball out. But Doolan, for some reason, doesn't. They can't score enough points to win the championship. All they need to do is win the match. So why on earth is he carrying on playing 5 metres from his own line? And the first thing they do is give away a penalty. Absolute madness from hero last week to 0 this week. And that was just nuts. So anyway, they go to a 5 metre line out, multiple phases battering away, and then just at the right moment, they finally go wide, and it's a long pass out, I think. Who comes on? Hastings comes on, that's it. Throws a nice long pass out to the left. Van der Merwe, good step, finish. What a tournament Van der Merwe's had, and Scotland go crazy. So what a game, what a finish. Scotland win, well deserved for that. Just to stick in the game. When they needed to, they had moments of quality. It wasn't all perfect, but France just a bit too frantic. Loads of firepower in that French team. We know if they get it right, they're going to be great. Just the physical ability that France have is unbelievable. It's not a cliche. France have more physical ability, I think, than most teams, but they need to just harness it a little bit better. They've still got a couple of years to get it right before the World Cup. They will want to win the Six Nations at some point in the next 2 years, of course. But they've come close again. It's okay for them. For Scotland, brilliant tournament for them. Been very disciplined, but still very attacking as well when they need to. But when the rain came down, they played it that little bit better and get the deserved win. That means Wales win the Six Nations. I will do a video on that coming up, but also I'll be doing videos on British and Irish Lion selection, and surely now Scotland are going to get a big quota of players in that squad that they haven't had for a while. Anyway, guys, let's talk about this game. Comment below what you thought of this game. I thought it was an absolute thriller, even though, it's the pandemic Six Nations again, if you like. Still loads of brilliant games to make up a little bit for the lack of fans. Anyway, guys, comments below, and I will catch you next time.